I never thought my life would spiral this far out of control. If you had asked me a year ago, I would have told you I had a plan. I was working as a nurse in Portland, Maine. My mom and I lived in a tiny apartment that smelled like sea salt and old books. And though we struggled to make rent some months, there was always laughter in that space. But then, she got sick. It was a quiet kind of sickness, the kind that doesn't announce itself until it's too late. By the time I'd scraped together enough to get her into a specialist, her heart was failing. She passed away 2 months later, leaving behind a mountain of medical debt that felt heavier than her absence. And me, I lost my job 3 weeks after the funeral. Budget cuts, they said. For months I floated doing odd shifts at diners selling off her jewelry, even her car. I tried not to think too much about how everything I touched seemed to crumble. That's when the ad found me. A loving couple looking for a surrogate. All medical expenses covered plus a generous compensation package. I told myself I wasn't selling my body. I was helping a family. I was buying my future back. But deep down, I knew it was desperation that drove me to sign the contract. Tonight was supposed to be the last checkup before the implantation procedure. If I got through this, I could finally breathe. I could pay off the debts, get a new apartment, maybe even apply for nursing jobs again. But life has a cruel sense of humor. The storm rolled in fast as I drove along Route 302. The kind of storm where the air feels charged, like the sky is holding its breath. I should have turned back when I saw the lightning split the sky over Sebago Lake, but I didn't have the time or gas money for delays. Then, my car sputtered. The dashboard lights flickered like dying fireflies. Not now, I muttered, gripping the wheel tighter as the engine coughed. It wasn't enough. The car gave one last shudder, before going still, leaving me stranded on a deserted stretch of road. The rain came down in sheets, drumming against the windshield so hard, I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. I tried my phone dead. Typical. For a moment I just sat there, hands trembling, forehead pressed to the steering wheel. Was this it? Was I destined to fail even at this? I shoved the thought away and opened the door, the icy wind immediately lashing against my soaked jacket. I stumbled onto the road, squinting through the blur of water and darkness. There was nothing but trees on either side. No lights, no passing cars. The thought of walking the 10 miles to the nearest gas station was laughable. That's when I heard it. A low rumble, faint at first, then louder. Headlights appeared in the distance, slicing through the sheets of rain. A truck, big, black, moving slowly as if the driver was scanning the road for something or someone. For a split second, relief flooded me. Then instinct kicked in, whispering danger. A lone woman stranded at night. A stranger's truck in the storm. This was how cautionary tales started. But as the truck pulled up beside me, stopping with a hiss of wet tires, I realized I didn't have much choice. The passenger window rolled down, and I caught a glimpse of the man inside. Older, broad-shouldered, sharp jawline obscured by a few days' stubble. His eyes were piercing pale gray, like the ocean in winter. "You're gonna freeze to death out here," he said, voice low, steady. I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to refuse, but the rain was soaking through to my bones, and I could barely feel my fingers anymore. "Get in," he said again. This time it wasn't a suggestion, and somehow I did. The inside of the truck smelled faintly of leather and rain. As soon as the door shut behind me, the noise of the storm dulled, replaced by the steady hum of the engine. and the rhythmic sweep of the wipers. I hesitated, dripping water onto the floor mat. The man behind the wheel didn't say a word at first. He kept his eyes on the road, one hand resting on the steering wheel, the other fiddling with the heat dial. "Your lips are blue," he said finally, his voice low but firm. "You need to warm up before hypothermia sets in." I pulled my soaked jacket tighter. "Thanks for stopping. I didn't think anyone would." He glanced at me briefly, those pale gray eyes flicking over my face, like he was reading more than I was saying. "Not many people come down this road in weather like this," he replied. "You're lucky I was passing through." Lucky. That word felt strange sitting in my chest. I studied him from the corner of my eye. He looked late 40s, maybe 50, with lines carved deep into his forehead, and a faint scar running along his jawline. His clothes were plain, dark jacket, faded jeans, but there was an air about him I couldn't place. Something disciplined. "Name's Jack," he said after a beat. I hesitated. Emily, he repeated slowly, as though testing how it felt in his mouth. For a few minutes, silence filled the cab, broken only by the sound of rain hammering the roof. I kept my hands folded in my lap, still debating whether I'd made a mistake getting in. "You from around here?" Jack asked. "Not exactly." I kept my answers short, unwilling to reveal too much. He didn't press. Instead, he nodded toward the dashboard. "Phone's dead." "Yeah, figures." Storms like this knock out power all over these parts. I wanted to ask why he was out driving in it, but the question caught in my throat. Then, as if reading my mind, he said, "Heading back to my place. Figured I'd check on a few things before the river floods over." I stiffened. His place. Not a gas station. Not a town. He must have seen the tension in my shoulders because he added, "Relax. I'm not gonna hurt you." "That's what they all say in the movies," I muttered before I could stop myself. For the first time, the edge of a smile tugged at his lips. It didn't reach his eyes. "You've got a sharp tongue for someone who was about to freeze to death on the side of the road." I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "It's just, I don't know you." "And I don't know you," he replied evenly. "But I know the storm's only getting worse. Your car's not going anywhere tonight. You've got two choices: sit in the cold until someone else maybe comes along, or stay somewhere warm until the road's clear." His voice was calm, rational, but there was an undertone that felt almost commanding. I stared out the window at the rain pounding against the glass, trying to weigh my options. The truth was, I didn't have any. "All right," I whispered. "Just for tonight." Jack didn't say anything. He simply turned the wheel, the truck rumbling as we pulled onto a narrow dirt road lined with towering pine trees. The inside of the truck smelled faintly of leather and rain. As soon as the door shut behind me, the noise of the storm dulled, replaced by the steady hum of the engine and the rhythmic sweep of the wipers. I hesitated, dripping water onto the floor mat. The man behind the wheel didn't say a word at first. He kept his eyes on the road, one hand resting on the steering wheel, the other fiddling with the heat dial. "Your lips are blue," he said finally, his voice low but firm. "You need to warm up before hypothermia sets in." I pulled my soaked jacket tighter. "Thanks for stopping. I didn't think anyone would." He glanced at me briefly, those pale gray eyes flicking over my face, like he was reading more than I was saying. "Not many people come down this road in weather like this," he replied. "You're lucky I was passing through." Lucky. That word felt strange sitting in my chest. I studied him from the corner of my eye. He looked late 40s, maybe 50, with lines carved deep into his forehead and a faint scar running along his jawline. His clothes were plain dark jacket, faded jeans, but there was an air about him I couldn't place. Something disciplined. "Name's Jack," he said after a beat. I hesitated. "Emily, Emily," he repeated slowly, as though testing how it felt in his mouth. For a few minutes, silence filled the cab, broken only by the sound of rain hammering the roof. I kept my hands folded in my lap, still debating whether I'd made a mistake getting in. "You from around here?" Jack asked. "Not exactly." I kept my answers short, unwilling to reveal too much. He didn't press. Instead, he nodded toward the dashboard. "Phone's dead." "Yeah, figures. Storms like this knock out power all over these parts." I wanted to ask why he was out driving in it, but the question caught in my throat. Then, as if reading my mind, he said, "Heading back to my place. Figured I'd check on a few things before the river floods over." I stiffened. His place? Not a gas station. Not a town. He must have seen the tension in my shoulders, because he added, "Relax. I'm not gonna hurt you." "That's what they all say in the movies," I muttered before I could stop myself. For the first time, the edge of a smile tugged at his lips. It didn't reach his eyes. "You've got a sharp tongue for someone who was about to freeze to death on the side of the road." I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "It's just, I don't know you." "And I don't know you," he replied evenly. "But I know the storm's only getting worse. Your car's not going anywhere tonight. You've got two choices: sit in the cold until someone else maybe comes along, or stay somewhere warm until the road's clear." His voice was calm, rational, but there was an undertone that felt almost commanding. I stared out the window at the rain pounding against the glass, trying to weigh my options. The truth was, I didn't have any. "All right," I whispered, "just for tonight." Jack didn't say anything. He simply turned the wheel, the truck rumbling as we pulled onto a narrow dirt road lined with towering pine trees. Jack opened the guest room door and flicked on the light. The space was simple, but warm. An old quilt folded neatly at the foot of a wooden bed, a dresser that smelled faintly of cedar, and a small window streaked with rain. "You can dry off here," he said, setting down a folded flannel shirt and sweatpants. "They'll be a little big, but they're clean." "Thank you," I murmured. He nodded and started to turn away, but hesitated. "Meet me in the kitchen when you're done," he said over his shoulder. I shut the door gently behind him, my fingers trembling as I peeled off my soaked clothes. My reflection in the cracked mirror above the dresser startled me. I looked tired, older than 28. The past few months had hollowed me out in ways I hadn't realized until now. As I pulled on the oversized clothes, I felt an unfamiliar mix of relief and unease. This man Jack had been nothing but kind so far, but there was a heaviness in his voice, an edge I couldn't quite name. When I padded barefoot into the kitchen, he was standing by the stove stirring something in a dented saucepan. The scent of tomato and herbs filled the air. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair. I slid into it, the wood creaking under me. He set a steaming bowl of soup in front of me and leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "I'll make this simple," he said. My spoon paused halfway to my mouth. "I know why you're here," he continued. "You're the surrogate Alicia hired." The words hit me like a slap. How do you know about that?" I stammered. "She called me last week," Jack said. "Told me she'd finally found someone desperate enough to carry our child." I flinched at his choice of words. I began, but he held up a hand. "I don't care why you signed the papers. That's between you and her. But let's get one thing straight." His eyes locked on mine, cold and sharp as winter ice. "This house, this life, it's not part of your contract. You're not here to play family. You're not here to ask questions or fix anything. You're here because of the storm. That's all." The heat in the room seemed to vanish, replaced by something brittle and heavy. "I understand," I whispered. He pushed off the counter, pacing once like a caged animal. "Alicia and we're not what you think. Whatever picture she painted for you, forget it. She wanted a child, not me. And His jaw tightened. "I never wanted any of this. The confession stunned me." "Then why agree to it?" I asked softly. His head snapped toward me, eyes narrowing. "Because sometimes it's easier to sign a piece of paper than to fight a war you've already lost." I swallowed hard, unsure what to say. He raked a hand through his damp hair and sighed. "Finish your soup. Get some rest. In the morning the storm should let up. I'll drive you back to town." The finality in his tone left no room for argument. I nodded, staring down at the bowl, as if the swirling broth might hold answers. The storm didn't let up the next morning. I woke to the sound of wind howling through the pines and rain tapping insistently against the window pane. For a moment, I let myself lie there, under the heavy quilt cocooned in warmth, pretending I was anywhere else. But then the memories returned Jack's words from the night before, sharp and cold. "You're not here to fix anything." I pushed the thought away and got dressed. The house was quiet when I stepped into the hall. A faint smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen, but there was no sign of Jack. I hesitated before wandering into the living room. That's when I saw it. He was sitting in the leather armchair by the fire, staring at a small object in his hand. At first, I thought it was a coin, but as I stepped closer, I recognized the glint of an old military ring, thick, worn the kind awarded to men who'd served long and hard. Jack turned it over between his fingers, his expression unreadable. There was something in the way he looked at that ring. Not pride, not nostalgia, more like regret. I cleared my throat softly. He didn't flinch, but he slid the ring into his pocket before looking up. "Storm's worse than I thought," he said, his voice low. "Roads are washed out. You'll have to stay another night." I nodded, unsure if I should thank him or apologize. "You hungry?" he asked. "A little. Help yourself. Bread's on the counter." I busied myself in the kitchen, trying to ignore the weight of his presence just a few feet away. All day Jack kept to himself. He fixed a loose shutter, chopped wood, cleaned his rifle at the table in silence. But every now and then, I caught him glancing at that ring again, his thumb brushing over it like a man tracing an old wound. That night, sleep wouldn't come. The storm was still raging outside, rattling the old window panes like angry fists. I lay staring at the ceiling, listening to the house groan in the wind. A faint sound drew my attention. Voices, no. Just one voice. Low, broken. I crept out of bed, my bare feet silent on the wooden floor. The sound came from the living room. Jack sat on the couch, hunched forward, shirtless, his back to me. And that's when I saw them. Scars, pale lines crisscrossing his broad shoulders, some thin like paper cuts, others thick and jagged like lightning bolts carved into flesh. A patch of mottled skin near his ribs told a story of fire burns, old but angry. I covered my mouth before a sound could escape. What kind of life had he lived to leave marks like those? I should have turned away, given him his privacy. But I stayed frozen, unable to look or step back. That's when he spoke. "Do you enjoy sneaking up on people?" His voice was calm, but there was steel in it. I jumped. I wasn't watching. He turned his head slightly enough for me to see the edge of his profile. "You're not very good at lying." Heat burned in my cheeks. "I'm sorry. I couldn't sleep and..." I heard, "Go back to bed," he said. There was no anger in his tone, just exhaustion. I hesitated. "Jack," I began softly, "those scars, they're not your concern." This time his voice was firm, leaving no room for questions. I nodded, retreating down the hallway as quietly as I could. But as I lay back in bed staring into the darkness, I couldn't shake the image of him sitting there haunted by whatever battles had carved those marks into his skin. The house had settled into an uneasy silence, broken only by the occasional crack of thunder rolling through the pines. I didn't know what drew me back to the living room. Maybe it was the sound of logs shifting in the fireplace. Or maybe it was the image of Jack's scars burned into my mind, like the marks themselves. When I stepped softly into the room, he didn't look up. He was sitting in the armchair again, hunched forward, a glass of amber liquid balanced in his hand. The firelight flickered across his face, painting it in gold and shadow. "You should be asleep," he said without turning. I couldn't. I admitted hugging the flannel shirt tighter around me. Silence stretched between us, like a wire pulled taut. "Sit if you're going to hover," he said finally. I hesitated, then lowered myself into the chair opposite him. The warmth from the fire seeped into my chilled skin, but it did nothing to ease the tension twisting in my chest. For a long time, we just sat there listening to the logs crackle. "Do you want to ask?" he said suddenly. I blinked. "Ask what about the scars?" My mouth went dry. "Only if you want to tell me." His gray eyes met mine, sharp and tired all at once. "I wasn't always like this," he said slowly. "Once upon a time, I thought I could fix the world." He let out a humorless laugh. "I was deployed overseas for most of my 20s. Different countries, different enemies. But it all blurs together after a while. One day a convoy I was leading hit an IED. I woke up in a hospital in Germany 3 weeks later. I said nothing, afraid to break whatever fragile thing he was sharing. They told me I was lucky to be alive, that my men weren't so lucky, and then they told me something else." His fingers tightened around the glass. The blast left me sterile. The words hung heavy in the air between us. I didn't care at first. I thought I'd never settle down anyway. But then Alicia. He trailed off, staring into the fire. "She wanted a child," I said softly. "She wanted a legacy," Jack corrected. "A baby she could dress in designer clothes and parade around. Not because she loved me. Not because she loved the idea of family." His jaw clenched. I signed the surrogacy contract because it was easier than fighting her. But I didn't think it would feel like this. Feel like what I whispered. Like failing at something I never wanted in the first place. My heart ached in a way I hadn't expected. I looked down at my hands, twisting the hem of the borrowed shirt. "You're not the only one who feels like a failure." Jack's eyes flicked toward me, but he said nothing. "My mom died last year," I said quietly, "left me drowning in debt. I lost my job a few weeks later, and this surrogacy." It wasn't some noble act. It was desperation. It was me trying to buy my way out of a life that's been crumbling for years. For a moment, the room felt unbearably raw. Two people strangers really bound by the weight of choices neither wanted to make. "You don't look like a failure to me," Jack said finally. His voice was softer now, almost tender. "Neither do you," I replied. Something shifted in the air between us. Not attraction, not yet, but understanding. The fire crackled louder, and for the first time since I'd met him, Jack didn't seem so untouchable. The storm showed no sign of stopping. On the third day, the world outside had disappeared into a gray curtain of rain and fog. The house creaked and groaned under the weight of the weather, but inside it was warm, almost safe. Almost. Jack and I had settled into an uneasy rhythm. He'd spend the mornings chopping wood or repairing small things around the house, and I'd help in the kitchen or fold laundry that wasn't mine to fold. We didn't speak much, but silence with him didn't feel uncomfortable anymore. That evening after dinner, I found myself standing at the top of the staircase, listening to the wind howl through the eaves. The power flickered once, then went out entirely, plunging the house into darkness. "Jack," I called softly. "Hold on," his voice came from below, calm, but closer than I expected. I took a step down, fumbling for the railing. My fingers barely grazed it when my foot slipped on the edge of the stair. Panic shot through me. Before I could cry out, a strong hand caught my arm, steadying me. "Easy," Jack said, his voice low in the darkness. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. He stood one step below me, his hand gripping my elbow firmly. His other hand pressed lightly against my back to keep me steady. In the faint light from the storm lantern he carried, I could just make out his face shadows, carving deep lines into his features. His gray eyes locked on mine. "Sorry," I breathed, barely more than a whisper. "I didn't see the edge." "You could have broken your neck," he murmured. His tone wasn't scolding, but there was something else in it, an edge I couldn't name. We stood frozen like that for a moment too long, close enough that I could feel the heat of his body, even in the chilly air. I was the first to pull back, though, not very far. "Thanks," I said softly. He didn't reply, but his hand lingered a heartbeat longer before he let go. "Come on," he said, finally, his voice tight. "It's not safe to wander in the dark." I followed him down the stairs, acutely aware of every creak in the wood and every inch of space or lack of it between us. In the kitchen, Jack set the lantern on the counter and adjusted the wick until the flame glowed brighter. "I'll find some candles for upstairs," he said. I nodded, my hands clasped in front of me, unsure why my chest felt so tight. "Emily," I looked up. "Be careful," he said. It wasn't a command. Not really. More like a plea. "I will," I promised. His gaze held mine for a moment longer, and I had the strange sense that if I looked too deeply, I'd fall into something I wasn't ready for. The rain hadn't stopped pounding on the roof. It drummed like a restless heartbeat, as though the storm itself sensed something building in the quiet house. Jack and I sat at the kitchen table, a single candle flickering between us. The power was still out, and the air felt heavier somehow, thick with words neither of us dared to speak. I watched him from across the table. The shadows softened the hard lines of his face, but they couldn't hide the storm in his gray eyes. He hadn't touched the coffee I made him. "Are you okay?" I asked quietly. Jack's fingers drummed once against the table before curling into a fist. "You shouldn't be here," he said finally. I swallowed hard. I didn't ask for the storm. That's not what I mean." His voice was low, almost pained. "You don't know me, Emily. You don't know what I've done, what I'm capable of. I know more than you think," I said softly. His eyes snapped to mine, sharp and searching. "I've seen the scars," I continued, my voice steady, even as my heart raced. "And I don't think they make you a monster. They make you human." The words seemed to hang between us like a fragile bridge. Jack stood suddenly, pushing the chair back. I thought he was about to walk out again, but instead, he circled the table slowly until he was standing behind me. "Emily," he said, his voice hoarse. I turned in my seat to look up at him. And then, without warning, his hands cupped my face. His lips crashed against mine. The kiss wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was desperate, like a man fighting to feel alive again, like he'd been holding his breath for years and had finally broken the surface. At first, I froze. This wasn't part of the plan. I wasn't supposed to feel this. But then my body betrayed me. I kissed him back. His fingers threaded through my hair, pulling me closer. I could taste the faint bitterness of whiskey on his lips, feel the heat radiating from his chest, even through the layers of fabric. The world outside didn't exist anymore. There was only this moment, raw and wild and wrong. So wrong. I broke away first, gasping for air. "Jack, we can't." His forehead pressed against mine, his breathing ragged. "I know," he whispered. "God help me, I know." I shoved the chair back and stood, my legs unsteady. "I'm carrying her, child," I said, my voice cracking. "I didn't ask for this," he said, his tone sharper now. "But I can't." He cut himself off, turning away, as if he couldn't bear to look at me. "I'm sorry," he muttered. I touched my lips, still burning from the kiss, and stepped back toward the hallway. "You should be," I said softly, though a part of me wasn't sure who I meant, him or myself. As I closed the guest room door behind me, I leaned against it, my chest heaving. Why did it feel like a line had been crossed that we could never erase? I woke to the sound of tires crunching on wet gravel. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. The storm had quieted overnight, leaving only a soft drizzle that draped the woods in gray mist. But then I heard a car door slam. Voices. I sat up, heart pounding, and hurried to the window. A sleek black SUV was parked in the drive, the kind of car that didn't belong out here on muddy country roads. And then I saw her. Alicia. Tall, elegant, wrapped in a trench coat that probably cost more than everything in my closet combined. Her heels sank slightly into the soft earth as she strode toward the front porch, an umbrella held high in one perfectly manicured hand. Jack was standing on the steps, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. I pressed my back against the wall, willing my heart to slow. Why was she here? A knock at the bedroom door made me jump. Emily Jack's voice came low but firm. "Come out." I swallowed hard, smoothing my hair with trembling fingers before stepping into the hallway. Alicia was already inside, dripping rainwater onto the hardwood floor. Her eyes found me immediately, so she said coolly, "This is her." The way she said it, like I was a thing, an object she'd ordered and was now inspecting, made my stomach knot. "I didn't expect to find you here," she continued, her voice soft, but edged with steel. "I thought our agreement was strictly professional." "It is," I said quickly. "You're staying in my husband's house," Alicia interrupted, her gaze flicking over me like a blade. "That doesn't feel very professional to me. The storm." "She was stranded," Jack said, his voice cutting across mine. "I brought her here, so she wouldn't freeze to death on the side of the road. Alicia's eyes didn't leave mine. Whatever excuse you tell yourself, remember this: you're carrying my child. That makes you useful. Her lip curled slightly. But don't confuse usefulness with importance. You don't belong here. You don't belong to him. You're a temporary arrangement, nothing more. The words stung sharp and deliberate. I opened my mouth, but Jack spoke first. That's enough, Alicia. She turned to him, one eyebrow arched. Is it because from where I'm standing, it looks like boundaries are already being blurred? Jack's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Alicia smirked. Good. I'm glad we understand each other. She brushed past me, her perfume sharp and cold, and climbed the stairs. I'll be staying here for a few days, she called over her shoulder. We have things to discuss, Jack. Her bedroom door clicked shut, leaving a heavy silence in her wake. I stood frozen, my hands clenched at my sides. She doesn't have the right to speak to me that way, I said, finally my voice trembling. Jack looked at me, his gray eyes shadowed. She's not used to people standing in her way. Then maybe someone should. For a moment, it seemed like he might say something. But instead, he turned and walked to the window, staring out at the misty woods. The tension in the house was thick enough to choke on. Alicia floated through the halls, like she owned not just the house, but the air we breathed. Every glance, every clipped word she directed my way was a warning: you don't belong here. I'd spent most of the afternoon in the guest room hands, resting on my belly. The baby wasn't even showing yet, but somehow it already felt like a shield and a chain all at once. When I heard the voices rising downstairs, I knew I couldn't stay hidden. You brought her into my home. Alicia's voice cut sharp like broken glass. You let her stay here like she's family. Have you completely lost your mind? I crept halfway down the stairs, staying just out of sight. She's carrying our child. Jack said, his voice low but hard. No, she's carrying my child, Alicia shot back. That was the agreement. You signed the papers, Jack. I signed them before I realized how broken this marriage is, he replied coldly. My breath caught. There was a pause. Then Alicia laughed, a sound without warmth. So, this is it. You're going to play the hero now. Protect the poor little surrogate because you think she's some kind of damsel. This has nothing to do with playing hero, Jack said. This has everything to do with the fact that you don't deserve to raise this baby. The words hung in the air like thunder. What did you just say? Alicia hissed. You heard me. I stepped down onto the bottom stair. Jack, I began softly. His head snapped toward me. For a moment, his face softened. She's not going anywhere, Alicia, he said firmly. And the baby, he or she, will be raised here. With us. Alicia turned slowly, her icy gaze fixing on me like a predator. You think you can steal my husband and my child in one breath, she said, her voice deceptively calm. I'm not trying to steal anything, I said, my voice trembling but steady. Enough, Jack barked. Alicia flinched at the force in his tone. This isn't about contracts or money anymore, he said, stepping closer to her. This is about what's right. And you've never understood that. Alicia's lips pressed into a thin line. You'll regret this, Jack, she said quietly. Both of you will. Maybe, he said, but I'd rather regret doing the right thing than spend the rest of my life watching you destroy everything good in your path. For a moment, Alicia looked like she might slap him, but then her expression hardened cold and smooth like marble. Fine, she said. You want her. You want the baby. They're yours. Her heels clicked on the hardwood as she strode to the door. "But don't think this is over," she added without looking back. The door slammed. The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at Jack, my chest tight. "You didn't have to do that," I whispered. "Yes, I did," he said simply. "Now what?" I asked. Jack's eyes softened as he stepped closer. "Now we figure it out. Together." Jack didn't say much after Alicia left. He spent the next few days keeping busy chopping firewood, fixing loose boards in the barn, cleaning rifles that probably hadn't been used in years. And I tried to tell myself that everything was fine. But at night, lying awake in the unfamiliar stillness of his house, the doubts crept in like shadows slipping through cracks in the walls. What if this wasn't real? What if I wasn't real to him? The thought clung to me like the damp chill in the air. It started small. A photo frame left face down on a dusty shelf. A woman's scarf folded neatly in the back of a drawer. And then there was the ring. I'd seen him holding it once late at night when he thought I was asleep. The way his thumb brushed over the inscription inside the band, his jaw tight, like he was swallowing words he couldn't speak. He never wore it, but he never let it go either. And I couldn't stop asking myself the question that made my stomach twist. Am I just filling a space she left behind? One morning, I found him sitting on the porch steps, staring out at the foggy fields. The coffee in his hands had long gone cold. "You're up early," I said, trying to sound light. "Couldn't sleep," he replied without looking at me. I hesitated, then sat down beside him. The wood was cold beneath me, and so was the space between us. "Jack," I began carefully, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. That woman in the picture," I said softly. "The one in the frame upstairs. Who was she?" His hand tightened around the coffee cup. "She was someone I thought I could build a future with," he said after a long pause. I waited, but he didn't offer more. "Do I remind you of her?" I asked before I could stop myself. His head turned sharply. "Emily, it's just..." I swallowed hard. "Sometimes it feels like you're looking through me, like you're seeing someone else." His brows furrowed, his lips parting as if to speak, but no words came out. "I need to know," I whispered. "Am I here because of me? Or because I look like her?" The silence that followed was worse than an answer. Jack set down his cup and rubbed a hand over his face. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he said finally. "You weren't supposed to matter." My chest tightened. "But you do." He looked at me, then his gray eyes stormy and conflicted. "You're not her, Emily. You're different. And that scares the hell out of me." I wanted to believe him. But fear and hope are terrible companions. They pull you in opposite directions until you're too tired to move at all. So I stood. "I think I need some air," I said, my voice barely steady. Jack didn't stop me as I walked down the steps and out into the misty fields. The sun was starting to sink when I finally worked up the courage to go back to the house. The fields smelled of damp earth and pine, the kind of smell that clung to your skin and made you feel small in the world. Jack was still on the porch when I returned. He sat with his elbows on his knees, staring at the horizon, like he was waiting for answers that would never come. "You didn't have to come back," he said quietly as I climbed the steps. "But I did," I replied, folding my arms around myself. The air between us felt heavier than the gray clouds overhead. "Emily," he began, his voice rough, "I know you have questions. I should have answered them a long time ago." I stayed silent, letting him speak. "When I first saw you..." He let out a harsh breath. God, it was like seeing a ghost. You have her eyes, her laugh. Even the way you move it knocked the wind out of me. A pang shot through my chest, sharp and cold. I thought maybe this was fate giving me a second chance. That's why I let you in. The words landed like stones. So I am just her shadow, I said, forcing the words past the lump in my throat. No. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the wooden boards. That's not what I'm saying. I stared at him, daring him to explain. At first, yes, Jack admitted. At first, it was about her. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. My nails dug into my palms. But then, he stepped closer, his gray eyes searching mine with a rawness that made me want to look away. Then it became about you. My breath caught. You're not her Emily. You're stubborn and kind in ways she never was. You challenge me. You make me want to be a man I didn't think I could be anymore. His voice softened, almost breaking. When I look at you now, I don't see her. I only see you. Part of me wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. But another part, the wounded, cautious part, whispered that love born from ghosts can never last. Jack, my voice trembled. Do you really know the difference? Or are you just convincing yourself? His jaw tightened, and for a moment he looked like he might reach for me. But he didn't. I know what's real, he said firmly. The question is, do you... I stepped back the porch, creaking under my weight. I want to believe you, I whispered. But I'm not sure I can yet. Jack's shoulders sagged as if the weight of my words pressed on him. Then I'll wait, he said simply. As long as it takes. I turned toward the door, pausing with my hand on the knob. Don't wait forever, I murmured. And then I slipped inside, leaving him alone with the gathering dark. The call came just before midnight. I was in the guest room, curled up in the armchair, staring at the faint outline of my belly. Jack had been distant all day, pacing the house, like a caged animal. When the ringtone shattered the silence, I almost didn't answer. But then I saw her name on the screen, Alicia. My thumb hovered over the decline button, but curiosity won out. Hello, I said cautiously. Her laugh was soft and sharp, like a knife sliding through silk. Oh, Emily, you poor, naive girl. I stiffened. What do you want to tell you the truth? She purred. The truth Jack has been keeping from you. I don't believe anything you say, I shot back, though. My voice trembled. You will, after this. There was a pause, then a ding, a message notification. Open it, Alicia ordered. I hesitated, then swiped the screen. A grainy photo filled my vision. Jack, years younger, in military fatigue, standing over a man on his knees. The man's hands were tied. It looked like an execution. My stomach lurched. What is this? I whispered. Jack's passed. Alicia said, her tone dripping with satisfaction. Your knight in shining armor has blood on his hands. He gave the order, pulled the trigger himself according to my sources. You're lying, I said, my voice barely audible. Am I? I could hear the smirk in her voice. Ask him. Watch how he stammers. Watch how he avoids your eyes. He's not the man you think he is, Emily. He never was. The line went dead. My fingers went numb around the phone. I stared at the photo again, bile rising in my throat. Could it be true? A floorboard creaked. I looked up to see Jack standing in the doorway, his broad frame silhouetted against the dim light. Who was that? He asked, his voice low and tight. I couldn't speak. I just held up the phone, the photo glowing like a brand in the dark. His jaw clenched, the muscle ticking. Emily, he began, but I flinched as he stepped forward. "Don't," I said sharply, hugging the phone to my chest. "Don't come any closer. You've seen Alicia's games before," he said, his tone urgent. "She's twisting things again." "Is it true?" My voice cracked. His eyes darkened. "Answer me, Jack. Did you do this? Did you order that man's death?" The silence that followed was worse than any answer. I stumbled to my feet, my legs trembling. "I trusted you," I whispered, my vision blurring with tears. "I thought you were different." "Emily, stay away from me," I choked out. And then I ran. I didn't stop to grab a coat or shoes. I just pushed past him down the hallway and out into the cold night air. The gravel cut into my bare feet, but I didn't care. All I knew was I had to get away from the house, from the lies from him. The rain came down in sheets, stinging my skin as I stumbled through the woods behind Jack's house. Each breath burned my lungs. Each step sent sharp pain through my bare feet. But I didn't care. All I could see was that photo burned into my mind. Jack standing over a man like an executioner. How could I have been so blind, Emily? His voice cut through the storm, deep and desperate. I froze. The beam of a flashlight swung wildly through the trees until it landed on me. "Emily, stop. Stay back," I shouted, backing up. My foot caught on a root and I almost fell. Jack's boots splashed in the mud as he reached me, rainwater dripping from his hair into his eyes. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. Hands raised. "Don't come any closer," I warned, my voice breaking. "You think I'd hurt the woman?" He stopped himself, shaking his head like he couldn't believe his own words. "You're the only thing that matters to me, Emily. Please listen." "Why should I?" I cried. "I saw the photo. Alicia told me everything." She lied. His tone sharpened. "That picture, it's from a mission in Syria. I wasn't killing that man, I was saving him. He was an informant the enemy wanted dead. The photo was taken seconds before we airlifted him to safety." "You expect me to believe that?" "Yes," Jack said firmly, "because it's the truth. And I can prove it." He pulled a folded paper from his jacket, protecting it from the rain with his hand. "This is a declassified report. I had it sent months ago in case Alicia tried something like this." I hesitated, then took it with trembling hands. The paper was damp but legible. Operation details, coordinates, names. At the bottom, a signature Colger Jack Whitmore. It all matched. I stared at the page until the letters blurred through my tears. "Emily, I've made mistakes," Jack said softly, "but I've never lied to you about my past. Never." I looked up at him. His face was raw, stripped of all his usual stoicism. "I can't lose you," he murmured. "Not now. Not when I finally know what it feels like to love someone with everything I am." My breath hitched. "You don't have to love me back. You don't have to say yes. But—" He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a simple gold band. "I can't let you walk away without knowing this. Marry me, Emily. Let me spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'll never belong to anyone else." The rain pounded around us, but it felt like the whole world had gone still. "I can't," I began, my voice trembling. "Jack, I'm scared. So am I," he said, stepping closer. "But love isn't about being fearless. It's about choosing each other, even when it's hard." My heart twisted. This was my moment, my choice. I could turn away and spend the rest of my life wondering, or I could take a leap of faith. I closed the distance between us and placed my hand over his. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Jack let out a breath like he'd been holding it forever, then pulled me into his arms. And for the first time in what felt like years, I felt safe. If you had told me 2 years ago that I'd be here standing behind the counter of my own little coffee shop in a quiet mountain town, I would have laughed in your face. But here I am. The bell above the door jingles as an elderly couple walks in, shaking the snow from their coats. "Morning?" Emily, Mrs. Carter, calls cheerfully. "Morning," I reply with a smile, pouring 2 mugs of hot cocoa just how they like it. Through the frosted window I can see Jack across the street. He's got our son in his arms, bundled up in a tiny red jacket. Sam giggles as Jack lifts him high into the air, his chubby hands grabbing at snowflakes. My chest tightens, not with fear or pain this time, but with something warmer, fuller. I still remember the night I thought I'd lost it all. The night I ran barefoot into the rain, heart pounding with betrayal. The night Jack found me and chose honesty over pride, love over fear. We've built so much since then. It wasn't easy. There were days I doubted him, days I doubted myself. But every time I stumbled, Jack was there, steady, patient, reminding me that we weren't our pasts. Now we have Sam, our little miracle. He's got Jack's gray eyes and my stubborn chin. Every time I look at him, I'm reminded of how far we've come. Emily. I blink and realize Mrs. Carter is holding out a $5 bill. "Keep the change, dear," she says with a wink. "Thank you," I reply softly, tucking the money into the till. As they leave, Jack pushes open the door, bringing a rush of cold air with him. "Your boys are here to pick you up," he says, grinning. Sam squeals and reaches for me. "Mommy," I scoop him into my arms, breathing in the sweet baby smell of his hair. "How was your adventure with Daddy?" I ask. "Snow angels," he announces proudly. Jack wraps an arm around my waist, his lips brushing my temple. "You ready to head home?" he murmurs. I glance around the shop, my shop, and feel a wave of quiet pride. The tables are all handmade by Jack. The shelves are filled with books I've collected over the years. It's not much, but it's ours. "Yes," I say, leaning into him. "Let's go home." The rain started softly that evening. It tapped against the windows of our little house, like an old friend asking to be let in. I stood at the kitchen sink, my hands still wet from washing Sam's sippy cups, and watched the drops streak down the glass. Jack came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. His warmth melted into my back. "Spring rain," he murmured against my hair. I leaned into him, resting my hands on his. We stood there in silence, watching as the world outside blurred into gray and silver. And just like that, I was back in the past. Back to that night, the night everything changed. I'd been drenched and shaking, standing on a deserted road, with nothing but heartbreak and fear to keep me company. That rain felt like punishment back then. But now, as I listened to its steady rhythm, I realize it wasn't. That storm didn't drown me. It saved me. Because without it, Jack never would have stopped his Jeep on that lonely road. He never would have seen me, truly seen me. And I never would have learned what it means to be loved so completely that even your broken pieces feel beautiful. Penny, for your thoughts. Jack's voice pulled me back. I turned to face him. I was thinking. I traced the line of his jaw, still rugged, but softer now with time. That 2 years ago, I thought that rain was the end of me. He raised an eyebrow. And now I know I said softly, it was just the beginning. Jack smiled that rare, full smile that still made my heart race. You saved me too, You know, he whispered. That night. You think I stopped for you, but the truth is, you stopped for me. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly, but inside there was only peace. I reached up, pulling his face down to mine, and kissed him slow. A promise. A thank you. A forever. When we pulled back, Jack rested his forehead against mine. I love you, Emily Whitmore, he said. And I love you. Jack Whitmore, I replied. The rain kept falling, but we didn't move. We didn't need to. Because for the first time in our lives, we weren't running from the storm. We were standing in it together. And this time, I wasn't afraid.